We begin the second Perek of Masechta Bava Metzia on Daf Chaf Aleph from Amud Aleph, the Mishnah. This is the Perek that will discuss the halachas of a person that finds a Metzia, a lost object. All the halachas when you're obligated to announce that you found it, be machriz and call it out and return it to the owner, and when can you keep it? You don't have an obligation to return it. One of the basic halachas about a Metzia, which the first Mishnah will speak about, is the concept of yush. If the person that lost it gave up on it, and he said, "Vayla l'chesarin kiss," we know that he gave up on it, then it becomes hefker. That's according to Rashi. Rashi here says a few times that when a person gives up on something that he lost, so it's learned from a pasuk actually, we'll see later here in this Perek, in the Mishnah, from Simla, we learn out that once a person gives up on it, it becomes hefker, and therefore whoever finds it can keep it. You don't have to call it out. There are other Rishonim that say that it's not mamish din of hefker, that when the person is miyayish, then the mitzvah of Hashavas Aveda doesn't apply, but it's not mamish hefker. But Rashi's shit is that it's hefker, and that's the basis of the first din of this Perek, and a lot of this Perek revolves around this din of yish, as we'll see. The following objects that you find are yours, you can keep it. And then the following, you're going to be obligated to announce them and return it to the owner. So in this Mishnah, it's going to bring mostly the examples of those that you can keep. These are the mitzias that you can keep for yourself. Matzah, peiris, mufuzarin. You find fruits that are spread out. Matzah, or mais mufuzaris, that is, or you find money that's spread out. So these are cases in the simple pshat of the Mishnah. We'll see soon the Gemara is going to explain what this Mishnah means, but in the simple pshat of the Mishnah, as Rashi here says, because the peiris that are spread out, or the money that's spread out, have no siman to it. So if it has no siman, that means that if the owner loses it, he doesn't expect to be able to retrieve it. So he gives up on it, yush, it's hefker, so you can keep it. Or other examples where there's no siman and it is a yush and a hefker. Kriches b'reshus harabim, you find bundles of grain that are in a reshus harabim. According to the way Rashi explains it here in the Mishnah, the Gemara will discuss it. Rashi explains that because everybody steps on it, so therefore even if it had a siman, but it gets destroyed and ruined, so therefore it doesn't keep its siman. So the owner gives up on it. Or v'igule dveila, pressed figs that are made like in a circle. Also something, the dried figs that doesn't have any siman. Kikrei shel nachtaim, loaves of bread that were baked by a baker that are all made the exact same, and therefore they don't have a siman either. Achrezes shel dogim, the fish that are put on this, also this circle, that on a string, the fish on a string, also that are made in the marketplace, all the same. The chaticha shel basar, pieces of meat that are cut by a butcher that are all cut the same, and you can't tell a difference from one another. Or v'gizei tzemer, the fleeces of wool, halakuchim mimedinasam, that are brought from the country, the place where they're brought, and they're brought in such a way that you don't see any siman and the difference between one and another. Or vanitze pishton, or from flax, the what? Bundles of flax that also have no siman. Or the shayne shel argamon, the strips of purple wool. All of these, there's no siman. The owner that loses it is miyayish, so therefore it's all yours. Divrei Rab Meir, that's what Rab Meir says. Rab Yudah adds to this and says, Kol sheyesh bo shinui, any of these things, if you find them the way the Mishnah described it, but then there's something that's unusual in it, then chayav lahachris. You'll be obligated to call it out and return it because there's a siman here. So what's an example for this case? Matzah igul, if you find what it said before, you find the igul of the pressed figs, but a b'toiche cheres, and in it is also a piece of earthenware. Or kikar, you find the bread of b'toiche mais. Inside the bread, there's money there. Obviously, very unusual. So such a thing, you have to call it out because the owner can come and identify it as his. He has a very good siman. Rab Shimon ben Elazar, Rab Shimon says another halacha that kol kli ampuria. A kli ampuria, which the Gemara will explain what this is. This is basically a vessel where there's going to be no siman for this, and therefore the owner is miyayish. Ein chayav lahachris. You don't have to call this out, and you can keep it. Okay, so now the Gemara will explain first what's the pshat of it when it said in the Mishnah, peiris mufuzarin. You find fruits that are spread out. How do you define this thing of spread out? Matzah peiris mufuzarin, that it's spread out. Like the Gemara, vikamo, spread out in what kind of area? Rabbi Yitzchak, so Rabbi Yitzchak explains both details. First of all, how many fruits we're talking about, and also what kind of space are we talking about? Kav, it's the measurement of a kav of fruits, which is the size of 24 eggs. Ba'arba amas. in the space of 4 amas. If it's spread out in that space, then you're not chayiv to call this out. As we'll see soon in the Gemara understands when it says here peiros, we're not talking about fruits, but we're talking over here about kernels from the grain that are spread out in these 4 amas. That's something you don't have to call out. That was Rabbi Yitzchak's pshat for the Mishnah. So now the Gemara asks on Rabbi Yitzchak's pshat, hey chidami, what did he mean to say? Why is he giving exactly this measurement over here for the halacha that the Mishnah says? If you can tell that what you found wasn't placed down here in an organized manner, you can see that it was dropped, it fell from the owner that left it there. So then, if you see that he just dropped it, afilu tuvanami, even if you have more than this amount of just a kav of fruits, even if there's more in this space, you should also be allowed to keep it, because the point here is it has no siman, and therefore the owner that loses it gives up on it. So why dafke this shear of just a kav of peiros? Even if it's more, since it has no siman, he gives up, you should be able to keep it. If you can tell that the way it was left there, the owner knew that he's leaving it there, and he left it there purposely because he's planning on coming back and retrieving it. It was too much for him to carry right now. He can put it there in a pile, and he's going to come back. Then so even if it's less than this measurement of a kav, and you could say, oh, if it's less, he for sure gave up on it. No, but if you see that he put it down in a very specific place, for sure that you shouldn't be allowed to take it. He's planning on coming back to get it. It's not a Metzia b'chlal. So what exactly is the pshat of what Rabbi Yitzchak was saying regarding the measurement of our Mishnah, that it's a kav within 4 amas? So Rav Ukva Bar Chome explains that Rabbi Yitzchak's pshat in the Mishnah was different the way we understood the Mishnah simply. The way we understood the Mishnah simply is that the point over here is because it has no siman, so the owner gives up on it, and so therefore you can keep it. But Rav Ukva Bar Chome says, no, according to Rabbi Yitzchak, there's a different pshat of the Mishnah. B'machneshte de beidori yaskinon. What the Mishnah is talking about is a place where you gather the grain, and it's in the threshing floor where they thresh, and then after you're done, you take all the kernels with you. So over here, it's on this threshing floor that the owner left over some of the kernels after he finished the threshing. So therefore, over here we say as follows: Kav ba'arba amis. If it's only if what he left there is this measurement of a kav within 4 ames, the nofish terchayu. So it's a big terche. It's a big exertion. It's work, extra work to go and pick up these kernels that are spread out in these 4 ames letarechinish. This person is not planning on coming back to do this work and to pick up these extra kernels that he left over there. After he finished threshing, he took all of his kernels with him, and naturally on the ground, you leave over some kernels, and we know that if you left those behind him, he's not coming back to get them. He's not going to come and take them, and therefore he considers them to be hefker. He left them there for anyone to take. However, if it's less than this amount, he's going to come back and take it, and he wasn't mafka them, because if it's less than this amount, it's not such a terche, and therefore we can expect that he's probably intending to come back, and therefore it's not hefker. So basically what you see here is, the Gemara on the Amud Beis is going to repeat this and say, this is the halacha of Aveda Midas. When we see that a person leaves something intentionally, so this is different than the concept of Yish. Yish is when you're not even aware that you lost it. And then there's the Inyan of Yish. Over here we're talking about something that a person left there intentionally. But he left it intentionally and he gives up on it. He's not planning on returning. So therefore over here, that's also a form of hefker. In the simple pshat of the Gemara says mafkelo, he's mafkir it. And some Rishonim Taka say the Gemara means literally that this is, just like when a person declares something hefker, this is considered to be hefker. Boy, Rabbi Yirmiyah. Huh? Is that siman here? No, there's no siman. There's no siman. But the point over here is not the fact that it has no siman. Over here, that's a different point. Over here, the point is Aveda Midas. So we know that the person is too much of a terch. He's not planning on coming back. So therefore, he gives this shear. This kind of shear, we know that he's not planning on coming back. What happens if what you see here that this person left is a half of the measurement we spoke about before, and he left it in a space of only 2 amas? Mahu. What's going to be the halacha here? So do I say kav bar bamis, the measurement that Rabbi Yitzchak gave regarding someone that left behind a kav within 4 amas? Time am I? What's the reason why we say that he's not returning? Mishum de nafesh terchayu. So the main point over here is, as the Gemara said before, because it's too much of a work to go and pick up these within 4 amas. the kav of these kernels of wheat that he left there. But chatzi kav b'shtei ames. But if you left half of that amount in a smaller space of 2 ames, kiven de loy nafesh terchayu. Since this is something which is much less exertion, it's half of the exertion, so therefore loy mafkelo. This is something that he's not mafkir, even though it's much less, but it's in a smaller space, so there's less exertion. So he's going to come back for it. So it's not hefker. Or perhaps you could say mishum delei chashivi. The main point of what Rabbi Yitzchak that is meant to say is, why will a person not go through this tercha to come and get a kav in 4 ames? Is because it's insignificant to him. That kind of amount within 4 ames, because it's insignificant, he's not going to exert himself with something that's so insignificant. It doesn't have enough chshivas. So v'chatzi kav b'shtei ames. So therefore, you could say the same thing. That if you have a half a kav within 2 ames, kivin delei chashivi, it's also not so chashiv. So mafkelu, we could assume that the person is going to be mafkirit. The Gemara has a similar shaila like this. So you see, this is the nukud of the shaila here. The nukud of the shaila is the main point, the fact that he doesn't want to exert himself to go dafke in 4 ames, or the main point is the fact that the reason he doesn't want to exert himself for this is because it's not so chashiv. It's not such a big loss for him. So the Gemara now says that the same iboya would play out in other cases as well. Kabayim b'shmayin ames. If the person left behind, double the amount, 2 kav, but it's spread out in a bigger space. It's spread out in 8 ames. Mahu, what's going to be the halacha there? Or kav ba'arba ames. If a person left behind a kav in the space of 4 ames. Sorry, again. This is not another. Sorry, this is the Gemara explaining the pshat of the Yibaya. Let me just read that again. So the Gemara is asking the shaila regarding 2 kav within 8 ames. And the Gemara says, do I say like this? Kav arba ames, like we said before, that a kav within 4 ames, time am I? What's the reason why I say that a person won't return to it? Mishum denofesh terchayu, because there's a very big terche to go and pick up these small kernels within this space of 4 ames. V'kol sheken kabayim b'shmayin ames. If that's the main reason, so then if it's spread out in a bigger space of 8 ames, definitely kiven denofesh terchayu tfei. It's actually more difficult for him to go and collect from what's spread out in 8 ames. Mafkelu. He's definitely not planning on coming back, so it's hefker. Or maybe the main reason here why we say the person won't return is mishum delei chashivi, because the amount that he left, the amount of 1 kav that he left is not chashiv enough for him. But v'kabayim b'shmayin ames. But if he leaves double the amount, 2 kav within 8 ames, kivin de chashivi le mafkelu. Because over here it's double the amount. It's more chashiv to him. So even though it's more of an exertion, but he may come back for it, so he's not going to be mafkirit. Another case where the sibaya plays out is kav shom shemin ba'arbamis. If a person left behind this measurement of a kav of sesame seeds within 4 ames, the sesame seeds are more expensive than the kernels of wheat, of grain. So mahu, what's going to be the halacha here? So again, do I say kav ba'arbamis time in my when you leave over a kav within 4 ames? The reason why I say that it's hefke mishum delei chashivi, because it's not important for the person. It's not so expensive, so he's not going to return. But shom shemin, even the chashivi sesame seeds, it's a higher value. It's more expensive than the grain. So lemafkelo, even though it's the same amount, but a person is not mafker. So we assume will come back. The main point here is that we know that the person will not exert himself. It's too much of a terche, and therefore the shumshemin, the sesame seeds, are smaller than the kernels that a person leaves behind. It's actually a bigger terche, even though it's more expensive, it's more valuable, but it's a bigger terche for the person to collect it within this space. So mafkalu, we could assume that the person is mafkadis. Another case where the sibaya plays out is kav tamri ba'arba ames. If you left over a kav of dates within 4 ames, spread out over 4 ames, or kav rimaini, or a kav of pomegranates ba'arba ames that are spread out over 4 ames. Mahu, what's the halacha here? Do I say kav ba'arba ames time in my? The reason why we say the kav of kernels of wheat that are spread out in 4 ames, the reason why we say a person gives up and his mafke is not coming back, it's not important to him. That kind of amount. So kav tamri ba'arba ames, kav rimaini ba'arba ames. So this amount of these fruits, whether dates or pomegranates that are spread out in 4 ames, nami kivin delei chashivi. So it's also not significant enough, mafkelo. So therefore the person is not coming back for it. We could assume that he's leaving it there and it's hefker. Or perhaps I should say,
means that these products are cheap.
Yeah, correct. It's the same. It's the same, it's the same cheap like the kernels of wheat to the kernels of any grain. Or perhaps mishum denofesh terchayu. The reason why a person won't come back to gather the kernels of wheat is because it's a big tercha. These kernels are small. and he's not going to come around to collect them within 4 amas. The kav tamri ba'arba amas, or the kav rimayni ba'arba amas, but if it's dates or pomegranates, which are much larger, are much easier to collect, even though it's not such a big exertion, person is not mafkir, and therefore he's going to come and pick it up. So what it concludes that this was the shaila that Rabbi Yirmiyah asked in all of these cases, what would be the halacha? The Rashba here actually said that Rabbi Yirmiyah didn't ask this question in all of these cases, because all of these cases are basically all one point. So he didn't repeat this question in all these cases. But there was the point that Rabbi Yirmiyah asked a question, and then in different yeshivas, they repeated the question of Rabbi Yirmiyah in different teifanim. And then Avashi, when he was Masada the Shas, he put in the questions in all the different teifanim that was brought in the yeshivas. But it's really all one point over here. Teiku, all this remains a question. Zak the Gemara, Itma, we learned the following machlekes regarding the halacha of Yush, which is what the Mishnah was based on, that when you're Miyayish, then you can keep the Metzia that you find. Yush Shalei Midas. If it's a case that there was a Yush, but the owner was not even aware of the fact that he lost this item, so therefore he wasn't Miyayish yet, but it's a case that we could assume that the owner, as soon as he finds out about it, he will be Miyayish. But he wasn't Miyayish yet. So what's the halacha here? Is this considered to be a Yush even before he becomes aware of this or not? Abaye says, Lo yavi Yush. No, there is no Yush here yet. And Rav Amar says, have a Yush. Because this is something that we know, that when he's going to find out about this, he's going to be Miyayish. So even before he's actually aware that he lost this item, it's already considered to be a Yush at that point. You find it, you pick it up, you can keep it. So the Gemara explains in what case this Iboy is relevant. If we're talking about an object that you found that has a simon on it, there won't be any argument over here about this, that if you found it at a time when the owner didn't even realize that he lost it, and then even if later on the owner is going to be Miyayish, we're not going to say, that really he was, maybe there should be an opinion here that would say that he really was already Miyayish from before, it's Yish Shalei Midas. You can't apply Yish Shalei Midas if it comes to we're talking about an object that has a simon on it. Why? Because or the Bach says, even if we heard that later on he was Miyayish of this, but you can't say that in the beginning when he lost it, that already then it's considered to be a Yish. Because the person that found this object, you took an object. What the Gemara means by the word isura, it means that you took something that at that point it's not common for the owner to be miyayish, and this because it has a simon. Because when the owner finds out that he lost it, like miyayish, there's no reason he should give up. He says to himself, I have a identification, a sign that it's mine. I'll give a simon, and therefore I'll take it back. So the fact that he was later miyayish, that's a new development that comes about later when after a period of time he sees he still can't find who found it, so then he's going to give up on it. But l'chatchile there was no yish. So you can't say over here that there's a yish shalei midas. There is no yish shalei midas yet. The yish happens only later. So over there for sure if you pick it up, you're going to be chayiv to return it to the owner. On the other hand, the Gemara says, here's another case where Abai and Rava will not argue about this, and this is in the reverse. Over here, everybody's going to agree that you do not have to return this, even if the owner was not aware that he lost it. If what the owner lost, he lost it in a place where you have the tide of the sea, which comes up and then draws things into the water. Or b'shladisis shalnar, if the river flows over and then it recedes and it draws these objects that are there at the river into the river. So then Avagav, there is space simon. Over here in this case, even if what was lost does have a simon, Rachman Nesharye, the Torah allows one that finds something from the sea or from the river to keep it. Kedabina Lamema Lekaman, as the Gemara is going to bring later, the Gemara is going to learn this from a pasuk. And so according to some Rishonim, this halacha of Zutah Shal Yam is not related even to the concept of Yish. It's you're able to keep it. It's based on a different pasuk that the Torah is mata. You can keep it. There's no mitzvah of a shavas aveda. There are other Rishonim that say that it is related to Yish, and even if it has a simon, there is a union of Yish over here. But this is a case that we for sure know that the owner is miyayish, or as I said, even without Yish, there's a gzeres hakos of the Torah says that you don't have to return it. So there's no machlekes of Abai and Rava about this. This is learned from a pasuk. So where is there machlekes? Kipligi. When does there machlekes apply? Bedava she'en b'simin. When you find an object which has no simon on it. So Abaye says, Lo yavi yiyosh. There's no yiyosh yet at this point. The hola yada the nafal minei. The person doesn't even know that he lost this. So therefore, so there is no actual yiyosh yet. True, when he finds out, he's going to immediately be meyayish. But since he doesn't know that he lost it yet, there is no yiyosh yet. Rava, however, says, Havi yiyosh. Rava says that it is a yiyosh even at this point before he's aware that he lost it. Because as soon as this person becomes aware of the fact that it fell from him, meyayish. At that point, the person will be meyayish. Because he says to himself, I have no simon on this, so therefore really his yish is from the beginning, even though he only finds out about it later, but the true yish comes from before, even before he's aware that he lost it. That's when the yish is. That's the machlekes in this kind of a case. Now, what it seems is that what the Gemara is describing here, this machlekes of Abaye v'Rava, is really most of the cases that the Mishnah brought before. When you find an object that has no simon. And the Mishnah said that you can keep all those objects, but now it would seem like that all those cases of the Mishnah is the case where Abaye and Rava argue when you find an item that has no siman, whether you can keep it or not. Do you rely on the fact? Do you say that there is a yish right from the beginning or not? So that's what the Gemara is going to address right in the beginning. We're going to go straight to our Mishnah. So we have a siman over here. This is many different ayahs that the Gemara is going to bring over here. All these letters of Pei, Mem, Gimel, Shin, Mem, Kuf, Gimel, Tes, Yud, Chof, Samach, Ayin, Zayin. The Mefarshim actually struggle to figure out each one of these letters. Some of them are clear, but some of them are not so clear exactly what this siman is, what raya it's referring to. Okay, so the Gemara begins with our Mishnah. Tashema, what did it say in our Mishnah, the first case? Peiris mufuzarin, you find fruits, or as you said, we saw before, kernels of wheat that are spread out, so then you can keep it. So now the Gemara starts off with the understanding of Hola Yoda the Nafal, the Gemara that is again, Hola Yoda the Nafal Minei, the person that lost these kernels doesn't even know that it fell from him. And nevertheless, the Mishnah is saying that because it has no siman, you can keep it. So the Gemara here is starting off with the understanding that we're talking about a situation where the person has no clue that he lost it. And the reason why the person that finds it could keep it is because there's no siman. So therefore, this Shalei Midas. He doesn't even know yet that he lost it, but nevertheless, the yish in this case allows you to keep it. So the Gemara right away answers, like we said already before, Ha'omar Rav Ukva Bar Chama already explained, Rabbi Yitzchak's pshat of the Mishnah, that over here, when it's not a case of yish Shalei Midash, because Hachabe Machneshte, the Bachskerse is, like we had before in the Gemara, the Bei Dari Yaskinim. We're talking over here by the threshing floor of these kernels, the Aveda Midasi. Here the point is different, that because he left this amount in this space, as the Gemara explained before, a kav and 4 amis, so we know that the owner intentionally left it there, he's not planning on coming back. That's the reason why you can keep it. It's not a case where it's yish shalei midas. Therefore there's no raya from here. So now Taisva says, based on what the Gemara says here, we now understand why Rabbi Yitzchak said that pshat in the Mishnah that he said before. Why didn't the Gemara just simply say that when it says peiris mufuzara and it's talking about peiris that have no siman, why did Rabbi Yitzchak give this specific shir of a kav within 4 amis? And then we explained that it's talking about a case of the threshing floor where the owner left it behind. Rabbi Yitzchak said that pshat because he didn't want it to be a question on the opinion that says yish shalei midas is not a yish. That's the source of the pshat that the Gemara said before. The next case in our Mishnah, what did it say? Tashama mois mufazaris. You find money that was spread out on the ground. Sarei l'shalei, you can keep it. So over here the reason is because there's yish. The owner gives up on it. There's no siman to this money that you find. But amai, why could you keep it? The owner doesn't even know that he lost it, so it's a yish, shalei midas, and still the Mishnah is saying that you're allowed to keep it. So this is a question on Abaye that says that it's not a yish. Answers the Gemara.
Why is it? How much money?
No. By money there's no siman. We'll see later in the Pedic here more details about money, but b'derech klal, by money there's no siman. Unless you have money, coins that are piled up one on the other, there's a specific siman. But here we're talking about money that's just thrown out and spread out on the ground. The coins, the money has no siman. Though it's shalei midas though. The owner doesn't even know that he lost it. So why should this yish have any kayach? There's no yish according to Abaye.
How do you know it's shalei midas?
The pashtus shalei midas. The Gemara's assumption is that it's shalei midas. The Gemara says you find coins, you have no idea whether the owner is aware that he lost it, or he's not aware that he lost it. It's mashma. Even if he's not aware that he lost it, you can still keep it. So the Gemara.
Most of the things people lose is like lemidas at the beginning.
Okay.
99.
Yeah.
Everything.
Okay. So let's hear. So let's hear what the Gemara is going to say now. So the Gemara answers, no, in this case, actually, the assumption is that it is midas. Hasam, kid Rabbi Nami or kid Rabbi Yitzchak. Over there, the answer is, like Rabbi Yitzchak answered for another question, as we'll see soon, the Amar, Rabbi Yitzchak said as follows, Adam asi lemashmish bekisei b'chol shah. It's the nature of a person, he has money in his pocket, he's constantly feeling his pocket to see if his money is still there. So Hachanami, here as well, Adam asi lemashmish bekisei b'chol shah v'shah. A person is constantly feeling to see if his money is still there, and if you find money, you could assume that the owner already knows that he lost it, and he was already actually miyayish, midas, and it's not shalei midas. This is the answer the Gemara is going to give for other questions here as well, that there are certain cases where there is an assumption that the owner is aware that he lost it. Tashema, the next case it said in our Mishnah, Yiguli Dvele v'kikr shel nachtem, you find the dried pressed figs, or you find the loaves of bread from a baker which have no siman, harei elu shaloi. You can keep this as well because it has no siman. So the question is, Amai, why could you keep it? The assumption is that the owner has no clue that he lost this. So how could you keep it? Based on the fact that it has no siman and he was miyayish, but there's no actual yishur yet. He's not aware that he lost it. So the one answers, Hasam Nami, here as well, there's an assumption that the owner knows that he lost it. Why? Agav the Yakidi, because these items are heavy, made the Yadabu. The person lost it, he lost a loaf of bread out of his bag, or the gulei dvela, which are heavy enough, the person realizes right away that he lost it, and therefore you could assume that there's a yush midas. Toshama, the other case it said in the Mishnah was a l'shayna shalagaman. You find strips of purple wool. Harei l'shalai, this is also yours. Now this is not something which is heavy, and this is not something where you could say that the person is constantly feeling, or that's what the Gemara assumes here. The person doesn't know that it fell out of his pocket, so it's a yush, whether it's shalai midas. Again, the Gemara answers this as well. Hasam nami, even though it's not money, but this as well, agav the chashivi, because it's purple wool. That's what the Mishnah said, not stam any kind of wool you lost. It's expensive, it's purple wool. So because it's expensive, mishmushi mimashmish buhu, a person is constantly making sure that he still has it with him. Like Rabbi Yitzchak said, so if you found it, you could assume that the owner knows that he lost it, and he was miyayish. He has aware and he was miyayish. Tashema, the Gemara asks from a brayse. A person finds money in a very busy area, in a Beis HaKnesses, a Beis HaMedrash, or in any other public area that there are many people coming and going there. So there, this item that you find, you can keep, because the owner gives up on them. And here, we'll see later in the Gemara about this in this Perek. Here, this is even in a case where the item that was found has a siman, because the owner thinks to himself that he's not going to, whoever found it he's not going to be able to identify who found it. He's not going to get it back. The Gemara will later discuss actually whether this is only in a place where it's all Yidden there, or it's a lot of Goyim that are there as well. That's a discussion later in the Gemara about this. But over here, the point is that because the owner is miyayish, so therefore you can keep it. But the question is, person has no clue that it fell from him. So how could you say that you can keep it? It's a yush shalai midas. So here's where Rabbi Yitzchak gave his answer. Because we're talking about money, the person feels his pocket all the time. We know that he's already aware that he lost it. Tashema, now the Gemara brings a rayat from another case, not exactly the case of a Metzia, but another halacha where we can learn out this halacha of Yishalei Midas. Here this is halacha of leket. We learned not long ago about the halacha of leket, which is when you have some of the tvua that you're gathering in the field and it fell down, one or two pieces, that has to be left for the poor people. So it says over here in this Mishnah, Me'ei Mesai kol adam mutarim beleket. At what point do you say that anybody could come and collect this leket? The leket is just for poor people. But after a certain time, when the poor people already gave up, they're not coming to take this leket, then anybody could come and take it. So at what point is that? So the Mishnah says, when the nemushais already went to collect the leket. Now, what does this term nemushais mean? Rabbi Yechanan said, Sabi the Ozli Atigra. These are the older people that come with a cane, and they're walking very slowly, and they are looking very carefully to see what leket there is there, because they go slow. So when they are done, and then still they missed something, so then the poor people gave up on this. They're not planning on coming back. It's all hefke. Anybody else could come and take this leket. Rish Lakish said another shir, Lakuti, Basa, Lakuti. When you have poor people that came once, and then another group of poor people came a second time, after that, they're already miyayish, and if there's still something left, anybody can come and take it. That's the halach in the Mishnah. So now the Gemara asks on this, what's this all based on? It It's based on the fact, really the leket belongs to poor people. But it's based on the fact that after it was collected already this much, the poor people give up on it. But why could we say that there's a year share that anybody, it's hefker, that anybody could take it? Yeah, the aniyim that are here in this city, in this area, they're miyayish. But but aren't there poor people that may be in other places that are not aware of what's going on over here, and they weren't necessarily miyayish? Maybe when they find out about the conditions, they will be miyayish, but at this point they're not aware of the conditions, so therefore they weren't yet actually miyayish. So this would be considered a yish shalei midas. Only when they find out will they actually be miyayish, but at this point they weren't yet actually miyayish. So how could you go and take this from the poor people that are in another place? So the Gemara answers, Omri, they said, no, these aniyim that are far away, they're miyayish right away. And they make up their mind right away that they don't want to take from here. Kivin deika aniyim hocha. People, the aniyim that are far away, they know that there are poor people that are here, living in this area where this leket is. Hanach me'ikare yushim yayish. The aniyim that are far away, not only do they give up after already it was collected a few times, they don't plan on coming here. Vamri aniyim dahasam alaktile. They say there are poor people that are there in that area, they're going to take it. So therefore there's an actual yish midas right from the beginning from those aniyim that are far away. One more ayah, let's learn for today. The Gemara says, Tatashama. It says over here in the Mishnah, this is talking about, this is a Mishnah in Maisris. So the Mishnah says like this, K'tziis baderech, a person finds dried figs on the way, even if he finds these dry figs right beside a property where you see the owner there is drying his figs in that property. So you see l'chayda that these figs came from this person, from this property. Or you see a fig tree that is in a person's property, but it's leaning over, it's hanging over into the road. And you find figs beneath this fig tree. Mutaris mishum gezel, you're allowed to take it. There's no issue of gzela. In other words, what you find there, the figs on the ground that you find, is all hefker. Upeturis mina meiser. And since it's hefker, it's also potter from meiser. That's the rule. If something is hefker, you don't give any meiser from it. But if it's olives or charuvim, boxer, carobs, in Yiddish it's boxer. Sorry. Okay, carobs that you find over here. So then aser. Then it will be aser to take this. Okay, so the Gemara over here is going to discuss. Over here, the Reish of the Mishnah, the Seif of this Mishnah is saying two opposite things. Over here, this is seemingly also a case where the owner lost something, but he's not necessarily aware of what he lost. These figs are falling from his tree. And he has no idea that these figs fell down in the street. It's shalei midas. And we're assuming that because it fell, the owner will give up on it, and therefore it's hefker. So the Reisha of the Mishnah seems to be saying that because it's shalei midas, so therefore it would be hefker. But then in the Seif of the Mishnah, when it talks about zeisim and charuvim, when it talks about the olives and the carobs, over here, it seems to be saying that when the owner is not aware of this and it fell, so therefore it's aser. So the Gemara explains like this: Bishleime Reisha la Abaye le Kashe. Abaye that holds that Yish Shalei Midas is not Yish. So then why did it say in the Reisha when you have these figs or these dried figs that are lost there, why are you allowed to keep it? Even though L'chayret Shalei Midas, it fell without the owner realizing why are you allowed to keep it? So according to Abaye, what it said in the Reisha of the Mishnah is not a question, because Agav the Chashivi Memashmish Buhu. Because this is something which is expensive, it's chashiv to the owner, so therefore this is something that the owner actually is aware about. So therefore, Ta'in Nami, the Meida Yediyah the Nasri. When it comes to the figs that fall from the tree, so the owner is aware that it fell from the tree, so therefore, in the Reisha of the Mishnah, it's not Shalei Midas. The owner is aware of this, and therefore, it's going to be hefker, and you're going to be potter from the Maestris. That's when they get to the Reisha of the Mishnah, why it's not a question on Abaye. On the Seif of the Mishnah, though, it's not as chashuv, the owner is not as aware, so therefore he's not miyayish. However, in the Seif of the Mishnah, that's a question on Rava. What does it say in the Seif of the Mishnah? We're talking about the olives and the carobs, which the owner is not aware of when it falls. And nevertheless, what did the Mishnah say? That it's asr to take from it. Why is it asr to take from it? Because the yush shalei midas is considered to be a yush. Is not considered to be a yish, that is. Because he's not aware of it, so therefore it's not a yish and it's not hefker. So l'rava kashya, that's a question on Rava that says that yish shalei midas is considered to be a yish. Diktani b'zeisim b'charuvim aser, you're not allowed to take them. So the Gemara says, according to Rava, there's a different shot in this Mishnah. Omar Rabavo explains, Rava learns like this. Shani Zayis, the reason why by Zaysim you're not allowed to take them is because Hoyel v'chazusa mechiyach olav. The nature of the olives is, when it falls to the ground, you can see which trees it came from. You can see in the nature and the way that Zaysim look exactly which tree it came from. Even after it falls from the tree, you can see very clearly which tree it came from. Duchte, the inish who? The space of where a person is the person makes that space for himself. You can see the source of where he came from. It's an example. The Gemara is saying the same thing also, the olives. You see the olives, which tree it came from. So therefore over here, when these olives fall to the ground, so the owner is not miyayish on this. And even when the owner will find out that it fell to the ground, he's never going to be miyayish because he knows, everybody can see that these olives came from my tree. And so therefore no one's going to take it. So that's why it's not hefker. That was the reason why in the Sefer it says that you're not allowed to take these olives. Now the Gemara explains, how does Rav explain the Reisha? Yachi afil Reisha nami. If so, in the Reisha of the Mishnah, when it speaks about figs, why shouldn't you say the same thing? That the owner you can recognize that these figs came from this tree. Rav Papa says, Te'ena im nifilasa nim eses. The figs, when it falls to the ground, it's softer. It's not like the figs which are harder. It's softer, and therefore, as it falls to the ground, it becomes ma'os, becomes disgusting. And the owner, according to Rashi's pshat, the owner is not interested in it anymore. It's not choshev to him. So therefore, he's mafkerev. Right? So therefore, it's a yush. But according to others, they say that because it becomes moss, you can't identify that it came from this tree anymore. Even if it's still chashuv, but you can't identify that it came from this tree, so therefore he gives up on it.